Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform where athletes and other alumni can network and connect within their affinity groups. More importantly, though, this show, Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey, is about, we interview former collegiate and professional athletes, and we talk about their journey in transitioning out of sports. And it's a major issue today, whether it's mental health, financial literacy, networking, connecting, there's a need to help these athletes do different things. And what we want to do is we want to truly teach, inspire athletes that there is life after sports. So we're so excited today to have Damon Lembi on. How you doing, Damon?
Great, Rob. How are you? Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm doing great. And so Damon, this is going to be a great show. He's a former baseball player, had great success, high school American, played at Arizona State. And then ultimately, when he was done playing, got into his company, Learnit, which we'll talk about. He's the CEO of the company. And then we're going to talk a little bit about being an author, which every time I talk to people, like, you got to be an author, you got to write a book. So you'll go into that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. You got to do it, Rob.
Yeah, that's what I hear. Somebody had hit me up with like, hey, just even if you do a chapter. Now, one thing I will say though, my son is a journalist. He's he does he's a managing editor, writer. So I said, if I'm ever going to write a book, he's my ghostwriter.
No, you should have him help. But it's funny. I've had so many people come to me since I've written my book and say, I've always wanted to write a book. I'd say probably 3 out of 10 people say that. And then they follow it up and say something to the effect of, if you can do it, I could do it. And I don't know if that's a compliment or not, but I'll take it as a compliment, and I think what they mean is I got a pretty busy schedule and was able to get it in. And once it gets done, it's pretty rewarding.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. And you'll tell us how we can find it afterwards. So let's talk about playing sports growing up. How did that shape you? We'll say playing sports leading up to college. How did that shape your life?
I would say I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area in a town called Burlingame, and I was really fortunate. My dad played college baseball at Santa Clara University. He was a relief pitcher. But growing up, I was really fortunate to have a group of friends who are still kind of like my best friends since kindergarten. And whatever season it was, we played baseball, football, basketball, and life kind of revolved around the San Francisco sports teams. Joe Montana and the 49ers, and the San Francisco Giants and the Golden State Warriors. And so everything kind of revolved around sports growing up through high school even.
Yeah, no, I was kind of the same way growing up in New Jersey. And Joe Montana broke my heart a couple times as a Giants fan, but
yeah. Joe Montana, a whole nother story. He was the corporate sponsor for our savings and loan. So I actually got an opportunity to get to know him really, really well over the years. And I've met a lot of athletes, and I'd have to say he's my idol and a genuinely great human being.
Yeah, that's good to know. It's a lot of times you talk to athletes, you're really not sure because some of these, it's hard because you're watching it as a fan on TV and you don't really know, are they a good guy, not a good guy? So that's good to know about Joe. So we'll go into fast forward down to college. So one of the things that we talk about a lot, and obviously the athletes transition out of sports. When you were at Arizona State, were there programs there to kind of help the athletes, with life after sports, as far as talking about, some of the areas like financial literacy, mental health?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, again, this was a long time ago. And when I was in college, I was really, focused on baseball. And I wasn't aware at the time. But with that being said, I have heard that Arizona State and even U of A both have programs for they're pretty good for student athletes now, but not that I'm aware of back then.
I should have prefaced that because you're right. I mean, I think back then, like when I went to college too, I don't think it really existed. I think schools are doing a better job now, but I still like one of my podcast guests. He played football, and he talked about it would have been great if there was maybe like even if it was a 4-week workshop or a semester that athletes had to be forced to take. And I guess you kind of hit it on the head too, though, is I think as an athlete, and especially like yourself, an elite athlete, you probably in a sense have tunnel vision. And even if you had it put out there to you might not necessarily utilize it.
Right. And I mean, I would even take it a step back. I think that two topics that should be taught in college more, even in high school, and not even just for athletes, but everybody, is financial literacy. You know, how do you keep track of your personal finances? And the other thing is sales. I think that there should be courses, and maybe there are now, maybe I'm outdated, but courses that just teach you how to do sales. Because in some aspect, everybody does sales to some degree. But no, I think that financial literacy and other things like that would be critical for athletes.
Yeah, and that's that's something that we're trying to do and put together, different types of resources to potentially go into these athletic departments. And from what I've heard too, and talking to you and some other folks at Arizona State is very progressive, which is great. I mean, and hopefully there's schools that become the models out there so that other schools start doing the same things to help make an impact here.
Yeah, I think it would be. I've heard through my friends, and this is not anything really to do with athletes in general, but overall, that Arizona State has been a really progressive and forward thinking when it comes to education in this 21st century.
Yeah, and and that's awesome. And I'm sure it's great to be associated as an alumni from that. So let's talk about it kind of leads me to alumni connection. So I always ask, and again, this is a while back when you went to school, same thing for me, but was there much interaction, and whether it's baseball or other sports, where alumni were coming back, alumni athletes, and working with, or the athletes talking, whether it was mentoring or career services, not just coming back for like the baseball games, alumni games and stuff like that?
Oh, I thought you were going to refer to the baseball games, because the opening story in my book is about Barry Bonds calling me over when I was on deck and giving me a read on the pitcher. But outside of that, no, I don't recall any situation of having ex athletes from ASU help mentor. I think it's a great idea. Great idea.
And so are you seeing any of it like now today? Do they reach out to you, or do you know any other like former athletes that are their schools are reaching out to them to kind of come back in that mode?
No, I don't know of anything like that happening. I do see quite a few athletes that I know and former athletes I know who reach out to me on behalf of other athletes. So I feel like athletes are pretty good, Rob, of doing that directly, where they're looking out for their, and it's not even necessarily just their own sport. It's not always baseball players reaching out for baseball players, but it's like, hey, there's this woman who played volleyball at Pepperdine. I really think you should talk to her, and I think she'd be great in this role or that role. And so, but I see more of that than from the school itself.
Yeah, and I think it's just I highly encourage, we're talking about obviously Alumni Direct, but of alumni trying to tap back in. And I think you hear different stories. I talked to an agent, and one of her guys is a former NFL player, and he wanted to go back to his school to, kind of help the athletes out. And he was almost like shunned, which is a shame. But I think part of it too, which has come across some of these different conversations, I guess it depends on also the culture within the athletic department and also the coaching staff, because it might be that when that athlete played, those coaches aren't there anymore. And so with new coaches, maybe there's not that same thought process of bringing alumni back.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd be curious as to why the athlete would be shunned to come back and help in that capacity. I think things like that can only benefit everybody, really. But yeah, I don't know why they would be shunned. I mean, I played quite a while ago, so the coaches that I have are pretty much all retired or gone. So it's a different group out there now.
But now you're fired up to go back to Arizona State and talk to some of the football players and baseball players as alumni, right?
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I mean, actually, I played for I was fortunate. I played for my history is I actually started off at Pepperdine University and played for Andy Lopez, who is in the Hall of Fame and won a World Series at both Arizona and Pepperdine. And then I also played for Jim Brock, the legendary Jim Brock, who died of my final year. He was battling cancer, but his widow Pat was kind enough to, who I still keep in touch with, send my book along to Willie Bloomquist, who's the head coach at Arizona State, and she CC'd me on the email. So I thought that was very, very sweet of her to do that.
Oh, absolutely. No, that's
Yeah.
great. So let's talk a little bit about NIL. So name, image, likeness, hot
Yep.
topic today. And obviously, when you and I were in school, it didn't exist. I mean, I guess people joke around. I guess there was other forms of NIL, maybe a little sponsors or things to that nature. But putting that aside, give me your thoughts, both positive and negative.
Well, I think it's great. Overall, I think there's a lot more positives than negatives. I think it's a great opportunity for athletes to gain their own personal brand. I know a lot of athletes as well who don't move on to a career after sports. It gives them an opportunity to earn some income. I think the schools and everything are earning a ton of money, especially in sports like basketball or football. I think, and with that being said, so I think that's the positive. To me, I think the negative could be if the brand that they're creating is not sports related. If because I think it should be focused on the sports and not on their life outside of sports. So I think that could be a negative as far as the athletes should focus on sports and the right type of brand, especially with how social media is these days.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that did and what's, I guess, related to that, what's your thoughts on like team chemistry? Do you think that's affecting athletes when you have some of these athletes that are enjoying that and then maybe other teammates not so much?
I think that's a great question. And, honestly, I didn't even think about it, but it has to, right? I mean, if you're playing with somebody and they're making X thousands of dollars and you got nothing, and it definitely adds probably to the conversation in the locker room. I mean, like I said, we didn't have that back then. And but yeah, I bet you there's some resentment and there's some competitiveness that might cause some rift amongst the players. I think that's very interesting. Um, I think another positive is, and you and I discussed this, it's going to give some schools an opportunity to compete at a level that they haven't been able to compete before. Where let's take USF basketball. They're a good team, but they may be able to, through NIL, recruit some great talent to come in. And that I think that can, for a city like San Francisco, which is kind of going through a hard time right now, having a fantastic basketball team could drive people back into the city, to a great city. So I think that could add a lot of value.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think from a negative aspect, I mean, there's not a lot of negatives. I think it's just more. I think the biggest thing that people talk about is just more of a need for education, and we've kind of touched on that before. But just I think understanding from a financial perspective, and this is some of the athletes have said, yeah, I would have loved it, but just making sure that they know, like if you've got a big payday coming, like there was one story I heard which was kind of sad. There was an athlete that they did some type of NIL thing, and let's say it was around $30,000 or $40,000 that they got out of the deal.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was because of that, it took their threshold, the income threshold, to a higher level to where the athlete lost the scholarship. And then the athlete also, him and his friends, blew the money, which is understandable because again, think, oh wow, we got this money, let's spend on this, and this, and that's where, I guess some of the downfall is, and where there needs to be that more help in the education side of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that right now, and you know this better than I do, but the NIL is kind of in its infant stages, and it's kind of the wild wild west out there. And in the conversations I've had, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it different state by state, even what's allowed and what's not allowed?
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking about that this morning with a couple of people. I didn't even realize that. I think at a college level it might not be. No, I could be wrong, but I know for sure at a high school level, yeah, there's certain states where you can, other states you can't, and it's like the way the money comes out, it's got to be. If you're in the states where it's kind of illegal, then you just can't. It comes across a different way. So yeah, that's something that they definitely have to look at as well.
I mean, thinking back about it, I guess I'm kind of, not exactly sure if I think it's fantastic for high school. level. I think that maybe that's too early on, but I was referring more when you asked me about positive negatives for college.
Right.
I think for high school, I think it's important to put some pretty hard constraints on it, and definitely some guidelines on what can and can't. Like the story you just said about somebody have a kid having 30,000-40,000 bucks, going out and spending it all, losing his college education, not losing his college education, but not being able to get a scholarship. I think they probably have to tighten that up a little bit.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. So let's shift over. Something that we're at Alumni Direct that we're really working on is to making those connections, and I think it's so important for people to network and connect, and even starting at that younger age, starting in high school and all that, and different things. So, talk a little bit about your thoughts on networking, connecting as an athlete while you're playing, and even after that.
I think networking and connecting is really important, and it's a skill that I think happens inherently to athletes when they're playing, in the sense of uh, being an athlete. I think you connect with other athletes, and you kind of there's kind of like a bond out there, right? Where you can tell if I'm in a group of 10 people and 7 of them are ex-athletes and 3 aren't. You can tell who are and who aren't. So I think athletes know how to do that. Now, when it comes to connecting and networking outside of their own community, and whether it's the business world or whatever, I think there is a gap that needs to be kind of worked on, help close, because I think that it's a tremendous opportunity for athletes to evolve and develop those skills, and then be able to help carry them on, while they're playing sports, but also while they're, when they're done. I think that it's one thing to send your resume out to get a job. It's another thing to get a warm introduction from somebody. Maybe you're somebody who went to University of Alabama, and you're looking to get a job somewhere, and somebody else is like, hey, this guy played basketball for Alabama, something like that, right? So I think that opens a lot more doors through networking.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think I guess the challenge is I was talking to one agent, and he said that the best time to network and connect is when you are still playing, because what he's seen is that a lot of players, they're just so focused on their game, which is understandable, but they're not taking the time to do that, to network and connect. And then all of a sudden when they're done, they're like, okay, they're just expecting that they're just going to drop into maybe these big jobs and all that, realizing that no, I mean, unless you're that star athlete that people recognize, probably not so much the case that you'll be in those positions. So it's critical for them to do that.
I think you hit on a good point. When you're an athlete, and you're in college, or you're in the midst of a professional career, you may not be thinking that far ahead. You're focused on your task at hand, which is being as competitive and as great as you can be in what you're doing, and maybe that you won't need that. And you may also be, like you just said, naive to the fact that you're the it person right now, but when your 15 minutes or whatever it is of fame is over with, um, it's important to have those connections moving into the next phase of your life. So yeah, I think that's probably an area that's well underserved as far as what athletes should be doing.
Yeah, and hopefully, and that's kind of like what we're trying to do, with this podcast, the show is to give them tips, and hopefully inspire them to start doing these type of things, just make more of an awareness about the importance of it, and hopefully that will have that positive impact on them.
Let me ask you this question: what do you think Alumni Direct can do to help athletes understand that they should have more of a sense of urgency to do it now, instead of waiting till after their career's over with?
I think it just comes down to like I keep saying, with like from the education perspective, and those are some of the things we're trying to implement within the site itself, and then just even parallel to it is to develop these programs with resources where we come in, and we talk to the athletes and talk about the importance of this. And I think having other athletes that have gone through in a positive understanding, I think would help as well. So, we always talk about going into an athletic department, someone like yourself, we're going into, like, say, in Arizona State, where, you're an alumni athlete that had success there. and for other athletes to kind of look up to what you're doing, not just baseball players, but all across. And then having people, obviously it's something you're good at, something that comes naturally to me, but helping them out. I mean, that's what we're looking to do. I think it's important to teach, and if they see it and just open up their mind to it, I think it will do well.
No, I think you're right. I think it's critical. It's important to have all the resources and the site and everything available for them to go to it. It's also great for them to hear from athletes, I believe, positive and negative. Athletes who could come in and say, hey, you may not think you need it. I'm in your position too. I didn't need it at the time, but man, if I could go back to where you're at now, I would start doing this. And here's, and give them kind of a launching pad of where they can do it. Maybe even say, maybe these athletes like myself or others who could come in and say, let's get some practice of it. Let me introduce you to a couple of individuals, and so give them the first step into learning how to network and start setting up those relationships for the future, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I think that would be great. And hopefully, more and more programs can be developed that way. And we hope to be kind of on the cutting edge of that. So let's talk about the transitioning out of sports. So the main topic of the show. And I think even what you just said, there's a roadmap, and there's been a lot of people that have had different stories. I mean, some get hurt in college. Some have the wherewithal to kind of think about other things once they're done, but then there's other ones that are so zoned in that they don't. So give some of your advice on, like in your case, what happened in your transition, and then some advice to other athletes.
Sure. Well, my story starts with, I actually started off at Pepperdine University. I got a full ride there after I decided not to make the journey playing minor leagues. My first year at Pepperdine, I got hurt. And I left. They ended up winning the World Series, so I was like, oh, "That's great," And then at the time, we didn't have the portal or whatever, so I had to go to a junior college, College of San Mateo, and I got to play for a guy named John Nochi, who was a phenomenal Hall of Fame baseball coach. Then I ended up at Arizona State. I had a great couple of years there. I think I was number 2 in the league in hitting, and all my eggs at this time were for baseball, right? It's like, okay, not even, not really planning on anything else. I figured that I had an opportunity to play in the minor leagues. I did realize that getting to the big leagues was tough, but I'm like, hey, I can figure that out later. I'm going to just focus, put all my energy on this. So I played. I had a really good year. My junior year, I figured I was waiting for that call. Remember, this is 1995, so there was no internet really, and 94, and so I just unfortunately didn't get drafted. I was kind of bummed out. Came back my senior year, had a good solid year. Was ready to get drafted. I would have been drafted in any round and play. The call never came. I was pretty bummed. Really depressed. But I said, hey, you know what? I'm not going to go the independent route. I want to start the rest of my life, the next phase. I'm really fortunate that I come from a family that had several businesses and a large real estate firm, hotels, all this stuff. But I wasn't sure that I had any transferable skills, and I was, nervous. But my dad was starting this new computer training company called Learnit. It was very small. And I just took a job there. I asked for a job there as a receptionist. I wanted to start, at the ground floor, and just kind of went in there really humble and wanted to prove to everybody there that, it wasn't just my dad giving me a job, at the head. And I worked my way up. I think to the date, I still answered more phones than anybody else, and taught classes, did sales, kind of got out of my comfort zone, did all that. And here we are. Fast forward 28 years. I've been the CEO for 20 plus years of this corporate training company. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be in education, and learning. And so I kind of share that in the book I wrote, The Learn It All Leader, where I just kind of share my personal stories and how I developed my leadership. And it's really, I've always been there to help athletes. If you look at my team right now, I would say 20%, well, I know 20% of our team members are ex-Division I athletes. in all sports. Baseball, I got a bunch of swimmers. And again, the swimmers aren't from the same school. It's just networking through their friends. They're like, hey, this person would be great. One was an Olympian for a year before he went back to doing swimming stuff. This person would be great and fit in really well with the culture that you have here. And so the reason why, I decided I wanted to get involved with helping athletes even more on a larger scale was because I really believe that athletes have the ability to be super successful in the business world if they're able to, network. But it all kind of starts with them believing in themselves, believing that the skills that they have, which I can tell you they are, if I could do it, they could do it, and so that's kind of like what I'm passionate about.
And that's great. And I think you hit it with the skill set. I mean, everybody talks about the DNA and the skill set of an athlete, and a lot of organizations you're attesting to look for that. And we on a recent podcast, and I bring this up a lot, but there's one guy, he played football in college, and when he got out, he got in the business world, and ultimately was a CEO for several different large companies. And he talks about that. He said, just realize, don't sell yourself short as an athlete. Everything, the leadership skills, the team building, the preparation, practice, hard work, everything goes into play to what you're saying there.
Send me afterwards the link. I want to listen to that episode. Yeah, I mean to piggyback on that. I mean, if you look at my company, Learnit, we're a B2B corporate training company, and we do skill training. I mean, so it's all about skills, and in this day and age, with everybody talking about AI and ChatGPT, it's like what skills are needed, and I think athletes have those innate skills, and to me those skills are, just to kind of piggyback on what you said. Number one, though, is learning agility. I think athletes know how to learn. I mean, the stickiness of learning. The other thing that you don't see, holistically, is that athletes understand the importance of hard work. They know what work means, and so I know I'm preaching to the choir with you and probably this audience, but I think it's important for athletes to understand that they have all those skills, from teamwork to, resilience and even courage. I mean, when you're playing baseball, you fail 7 out of 10 times and you're a superstar. It's just taking that and realizing that you have those skills and then moving it into the business world. Look, you can't teach that stuff. But what you can teach is how to make a sales call, or how to be an accountant. You could teach those technical skills. You can't teach a lot of the discipline and everything else that guys like me and women like me learned through our sports career. So that's yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome advice there. So let's talk about now, talk a little more about some of the things that you're doing at Learnit and how you're helping people out in the education space.
Sure. So Learnit, what we are is we're a corporate training company, and companies turn to us when they are, let's say, for instance, they have first-time managers or new managers who are struggling to moving into this new role. So we help equip them with the skills that they'll need to be successful. Companies also come to us if their employees are frustrated, and let's say that they have their quarterly pulse survey, and it's like, hey, we don't have enough growth opportunities, or and there's high attrition at companies. So we come in and help them build a culture of learning, and to help develop and set career growth for their team members. And we do this through virtual instructor-led training. So it's typically set up through different business units or HR, and so yeah, we've been doing it for a long time, and more than anything, I'm just really proud of the team I've been able to build over these years and partner with these customers that I've really been able to see, how their organizations and cultures work. And it's been great.
Yeah, no, it sounds like, I mean, are there any particular industries that you kind of resonate to?
Well, we try to be pretty industry agnostic, but I would say that the ones we typically work with the most are pharmaceutical companies, retail, healthcare, and banking. Those are. But I'd also like to say that there are several sports teams, including the Atlanta Braves, the San Francisco Giants, Golden State Warriors, that we work with, and not we're not working with the players or Steve Kerr, but the teams, the teams internally, like the customer support team and the sales team, and we're helping them build their skills, and that's been fun too. It's kind of, I think one of my a very short version of the story is, but one of my around our Learnit's 20-year anniversary, everybody was coming into town, and the day before we were doing a leadership training for all the managers of the Giants, San Francisco Giants, Rob, in the locker room. That's in the locker room. And so the woman who was delivering it, we'd go out once a month to do it. She brought me in. It was the final session, and as I walked through it's just surreal. It's like I wanted to be a baseball player, and here I am doing it through education. And as I'm walking into the locker room to begin the training, the president of the Giants, Larry Bear, stops me at the door and says, "Hey, I've heard a lot about Learnit and how you've helped my team. I really appreciate it. You want to sit at my table for this training?" So it's like, cool. Just so crazy how everything turns out.
Yeah, it's funny. Killed it. I was thinking about the other day is you talk a lot of these athletes that they might have stopped at college and then they've gone to successful careers like yourself, and I think back to Field of Dreams, and you think back to the kid that was the ultimately became the doctor, and it's like you find your purpose in life, and even as a professional athlete, a lot of it doesn't last long unless you're just really some of the few that are fortunate enough to play long. So that's great. Let's kind of finish up on talk a little bit about your book, and then after that you'll kind of tell people where they can find you, and even though we'll put it in the show notes, but just kind of go ahead and do that.
Sure. I mean, you can find, easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn at Damon Lembi, Lembi. I'm sure you'll get it in show notes. And my book is the Learn It All Leader, and you can find it on Amazon. And as I mentioned before, it's kind of, it's just my personal journey on what I've learned from these 3 Hall of Fame baseball coaches I played for, and also my father, who passed away in 2010. I learned from them, and I molded my own leadership style. And I got a bunch of stories in there, from Barry Bonds to Axl Rose, and different leadership lessons. And and then my business is learnit.com. And if you're listening to the show and you want a free class, just send me a message on my LinkedIn, and I'll give you, you could free learn it, anything from, if you want to learn how to use Excel, to one class, Excel, to maybe how to get an introduction to leadership, or anything, or for a friend. Just let me know.
That sounds great. Go to Learnit, everybody.
Go to Learnit, or go to Damon at LinkedIn, and send me a message, and I'll connect you for a free class.
Yeah. Now the one question I asked too with the book, is it on Audible or no?
Well, I mean, that's what's so interesting about that. So I went and I recorded the whole thing, and I got the files yesterday, and I'm going to listen to them. And if again, I got out of my comfort zone, did it, and if I think it's good, then good enough, I'll do it. But I'm proud of myself for doing it, because I got 2 little ones, Wally, who's 2, who, by the way, I wanted to say is most likely going to be a big league third baseman if he chooses to, in 20 years. And then my daughter, Lucy, who's wonderful. And they got a kick out of listening to it last night. So I don't know, Rob, maybe I'll send it to you, and you can give me your honest opinion and see what you think.
I would love to. I mean, I hope to, I try to get my kids to watch my podcast, or my grandson. So same thing, but you can find us on alumnidirect.com. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and follow the show. I think there's so much great content, and you'll just find each show that just great things that these athletes are sharing. And we really want to make that positive impact. And you can find us on YouTube as well as all the podcast networks. But this has been great, Damon. I really appreciate the time today.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me. You're doing a good thing. Keep it up.
Thank you. I appreciate it.